This is the 2007 C6 Corvette with the Z51 package. In a world where used cars are extraordinarily expensive, there's a few out there that give you an insane bang for your buck. This right here is one of them. This example has only 20,000 miles on it and was purchased for just under $30,000. It comes with a 6.0 liter LS2 V8 engine that produces 400 horsepower at a 6,400 RPM redline. This car comes in a rear-wheel drive stick-shift configuration that is rarely seen anymore nowadays. In the world of electric vehicles, this car says no. The Chevrolet Corvette has become an absolute classic in the world of sports cars, producing so much power for so little money. This is a recipe that very few cars utilized ever and today. Furthermore, this is the C6 generation, meaning it ranged from 2005 to 2013. The only significant change that occurred in this generation was in 2008 when the car got the LS3 engine instead of the LS2. This meant about 30 horsepower more and a little bit more reliability. But what is beautiful about the engines that go into these cars is that they are known for their ability to be robust at high mileage and to handle abuse left and right. This is also the sports car that does it all. You can daily drive it with absolutely no problems and you will not lose much money on resale. You could also convert it into a full-on track car if you want, or what most people do is somewhere in between. It could be a weekend driver that you take to the track every 6 months. You could do whatever you want with it. Furthermore, it is extremely livable. When we get to the interior, you will see this, but there is a ton of space, a ton of creature comforts. The trunk is pretty large for what it is, and the ride is pretty soft. When you take all these things into account, this is a car that will not beat you if you take it on the road every single day. This generation received a ton of improvements from Chevy, and among them, the biggest is probably the interior. Having owned a C5 Corvette myself, which ran from 1997 to 2004, when you move into this generation, quite a bit happened. They maintain the same 50-50 front-to-back weight ratio by having the engine up front and the transmission out back. This allows for very good steering dynamics, very little under or oversteer, and makes the car handle extremely flat in high G-force turns. The interior, on the other hand, in the C5 was an absolute rattle box. Anything that you touched creaked, anything that you screwed around with, moved, it just was not well put together. However, in the C6, the interior has received a lot of upgrading. It doesn't look 10 times better or anything, it still looks okay. However, the build quality is where there really is a noticeable difference. So, now that we get into the interior, we can see what actually has changed. First off, the dashboard remains analog with these gauges still being activated by pins. It hasn't went digital yet as it did in the C7, and that is honestly something I really like. Furthermore, the steering wheel has still retained its round shape, no flat bottom for this generation. However, this is still a lot better put together than the C5 steering wheel. As we pan over to the right, we could see that the entire head unit is pretty well put together with a lot of easy to access controls, nothing over the top, but it's simple and it gets you everything that you need. Furthermore, we have our 6-speed manual transmission. The shifter feels exactly like any other Corvette. I've driven C5, C6s, C7s, and all of them feel pretty much exactly the same. It's a very notchy, heavy shifter with long throws. So if you really like to be stick happy and you like to throw through the gears every time you drive the car, this gives you a really satisfying feeling as the big heavy knob and long throws will keep you moving your arm around pretty much non-stop. Two cup holders right here, which are actually surprisingly usable, something that the C5 Corvette lacked. The entire dashboard is made of this nice kind of almost leather material as opposed to the plastics that were used in the previous generation. As you can see, when you press on it, it is significantly better put together. There's no creaking, there's nothing weird going on. You could shake everything, you could touch everything, and nothing strange happens. Whereas previously, the entire car would feel like it was about to come apart. As we look at our seats, we can see that we have a nice leather seat with some solid bolsters to hold you in while cornering. This comes with the Z51 package, but I do believe the C6 seats are roughly the same. Furthermore, as we move up, you can see that we have the glass target top that allows you to see out into the sky. This is really nice for weekend drives, although the only downside to it is that it will make your interior very hot. You can remove it with two latches that could be located here and below this right here. There's one more back here that you pull, and with those three it comes off. It's very light, maybe about 20 pounds, but you can replace it with one that is red in color or whatever color the car is, And that will give the car a consistent look on the outside, whereas this looks like a black roof from the outside. And as we look backwards into the hatch, we can see that we have plenty of space. There is this tarp right here, but if you lift it up, you can see there is enough room to fit multiple suitcases, golf bags, computer bags, whatever you can think of. Having owned and daily driven one of these myself, I could tell you it can handle just about any loads and luggage that you might have for it. Now that we've seen the inside, it's time to talk styling as far as the exterior is concerned. So our front bumper is pretty simple, pretty similar to the C5, but the biggest difference that you will notice is the headlights. They got rid of the pop-up headlights. You might love that, you might hate it, but I personally think they did a really good job with it. These headlights almost resemble something like a 5th generation Dodge Viper, and I really do think the shape of them looks quite good when you're looking at the car from a distance. The paint quality is extremely high. This car has 20,000 miles on it, and I cannot find a single chip or imperfection in this front end paint, given that could be a result of the owner taking very good care of it. But either way, having owned multiple Subarus, I can tell you this is not bad paint. As we move to the hood, you can see we have this large bulge to house this big LS2 engine that sits in here. I think that looks really good and gives the entire front end a nice, sleek look to it, which is kind of helped out by the fact that we have these big bulges over the wheel wells on each side that wrap towards the cabin. I think the front end of this car looks absolutely fantastic, and I believe the C6 will be a timeless classic that is here to stay. Now, as we get a little bit more into the side of the car, this car comes with 18-inch rims. These are exclusive to the Z51 package in this nice chrome color. It also gets larger slotted disc brakes that allow the car to have an extraordinarily high stopping power. These are paired with big brake calipers that sit on the back edge of the rotor with big thick brake pads that can handle quite high temperatures. These rotors seem to last pretty long. I see very little wear on them over the usage of this car. And overall, I think these wheels look really good when you take into account the small wheel gap that comes with the car as well. It's not looking like it is meant to go off-road. And as we look at the side of the car, you can see this side profile has some really nice lines to it. It just comes up nice and sleek, and it looks quite nice with this A-pillar being in black when you have the black roof on there. Some cars have a red A-pillar, this one has black, so the black glass roof actually really does work. There's then this red stripe which breaks up the roof, which I think does look quite good. The door handles have been moved to this inside slot right here that you just pull to open, as opposed to before when they were sitting on the outside of the car. Your gas cap is right there. That is pretty standard. In the back, we have a similar situation going on right here with the wheel. The only difference is that the brake rotor is significantly smaller, as it is on most cars. This back tire is 9.5 inches wide and comes with a 285 tire, giving it plenty of traction. This is a car that is pretty hard to break loose. 400 horsepower is a lot, but it's not quite enough to make the wheels spin, so you shouldn't have too many traction issues. As you continue to the back here, you can see we get this nice contour that comes around through here with the hatch. I think this looks absolutely phenomenal, and the back end of this car is one of the biggest improvements to its design. I think these 4 headlights look significantly better than the C5, although pretty similar. The big difference, even though we've retained this 4 quad tip exhaust in the center here, is how wide and beefy the back end is. Having seen them both side by side, it seems as if Chevy really widened this back end of the car for the C6 generation, giving it a much fatter and a more aggressive look in the back. I think overall the car does not have a single bad angle, and the looks is one of the best things about the C6 Corvette. So with that being said, that is enough blabbing from my end about how the car looks and how the interior is. It's time that we take it for a drive. So obviously the highlight of this car is the big V8 engine that you receive with it. It produces 400 horsepower and makes a glorious sound you could hear right here. Pulls really hard and doesn't seem to let up at all after very high speeds. Additionally, 6th gear in this transmission drops the RPMs really low so that at highway speeds there's no drone, no noise, and the car actually becomes really quiet, comfortable, and livable. It drops RPMs down below 2,000, honestly even into the 1,500 range when you're doing 80 miles an hour, making it super good for long distance or highway driving. The steering dynamics of the car are quite good. There's not really any over or understeer involved with it. The car handles extremely flat in corners. And I believe this is due largely in part to the 50-50 front-to-back weight ratio achieved within this generation. The suspension is quite tight and you feel a lot of what's in the road when you are throwing the car into a turn. However, when you're going straight and you're not accelerating or decelerating, it really does kind of quiet down and become a very calm, comfortable ride. This car is a very good example of a car that can go mild to wild. It's very tame when you want it to be, but it can also bring out more of a race car feel when you actually put it through some abuse. The clutch itself has quite a long throw and is pretty stiff at first. It takes a little bit of getting used to because of how heavy the spring is, although I honestly like the feel that gives you. The entire car is meant to feel like it is put well together, and I think through the transmission and through the clutch, they really do achieve that quite well. The transmission, the shifter, is very heavy and notchy, and it feels like there's almost nothing that you could do to break it. It doesn't feel fragile at all. As a matter of fact, it is quite the opposite, and the clutch feels quite the same way. I struggle to ever imagine burning through a clutch on this car because they feel so heavy and strong when it engages. The brake and gas pedal also feel very well put together. Their metal construction makes them feel like they're not cheap in any way, shape, or form, and the spacing of them is quite good if you want to be doing heel-toe downshifts. I was trying a few of them myself, and I'd never really had any problems with it. Simple rev matching is also really easy as the gas pedal is mounted from the top, not the bottom, and gives a really natural feel where you can plant your heel into the footwell and allow your ball of your foot to do most of the work. The car is really good to drive overall, and it just feels so much better put together than previous generations. It gives the driver a very empowering feel, and it feels like it is very easy to control the car at its limit. As far as the look of the car is concerned from inside, looking over the big rounded hood in this red color, it looks really, really nice and really kind of reminds you of what you're driving as you're driving it. Additionally, I was doing this drive with the glass target top roof on where you could see out into the sky, and that actually was really cool to see as you were moving. I think it adds a lot to the atmosphere of the cabin and really does make it feel larger than it is. One of the beautiful things about these older cars is that the power steering is hydraulic, it's not electric, which gives you a direct feel with the steering wheel. Anything that you do, you can feel it directly impacting the weight shift of the car and the pivoting of the wheels. With electric power steering, this gets lost a little bit in modern cars, but the C6 Corvette retains this feature, making the steering inputs feel very direct, and you could feel any bit of undulations in the road, any bit of bumps through the steering wheel, and that driver feedback is something that makes this car really fun to drive. One of the other really good things about this engine is the torque that it produces down in low RPMs. There's nothing more satisfying than being able to punch it in a high gear in low RPM and get that instant throttle response. You get on the gas and it just goes. It has the torque to move the car. Meanwhile, the V8 in this car sounds really good at those low RPMs. It gives that big throaty sound that you absolutely just love to hear, that makes you want to be putting your foot down every time that you get in it. And of course, although the engine sounds good in low RPM, it's best heard when you are flooring it and running it all of the way to redline. This engine sounds absolutely incredible under wide open throttle, and here's a good example of that now. All in all, the C6 Corvette provides an extremely well-rounded driving experience with a good mix of handling, power, braking. The weight distribution really adds to the feel of the car, as well as the hydraulic systems not being electric, giving the driver a very connected to the car feel. The entire car, once again, is very well constructed with everything that you are touching, being the transmission, the steering wheel, and the clutch pedal, all feeling like it is very well put together and gives the car a really, really nice feel. Even if you do not plan on buying one, I really suggest that you drive one if you ever get the chance to, just so that you can appreciate how far ahead of its time the C6 Corvette was. For a car that was produced in 2007, the driving dynamics of it are superior to many cars that I have driven that have been produced in the last 5 years. That being said, I think the C6 Corvette is a phenomenal option in the used car market today, and there's not much out there that's going to beat it for the price that you get it. I can't think of many other cars under $30,000 that have as much power as they do and are as usable as the C6 Corvette.